Greetings, fellow musical people. Greetings from a country that used to be a really beautiful place and it's turning into a cesspool. I'd like to say just a few words about one of my systems, the amplified circle of fifths. I started making videos on this topic, I think in November of 2019, and I covered like a zillion things, and I'd like to review just a couple of them. Over the many, many years, I took the very primitive, very simple circle of fifths, and I developed it highly. And I took a large circle, and I created data rings, and then I used slices. Okay, I've talked about that before. You can see them in other videos. So I have data rings, and I have slices. And you've seen this many times. You have your subject slice, like this would be your tonal center that you're focusing on, and you have your opposite slice. I call it the aggregating slice. And then if you're interested in that, you can go back and see my former videos, but that's the gist of it. And ultimately, I ended up with this. Looks like this, the amplified circle of fifths. Now, if you actually like this topic and find it useful, you can go on my YouTube channel, Scalephrase, and under the heading Community, okay? There's a tab that says Community. You can click on that, and I posted the image of that circle of fifths, and you might be able to copy it or save it and then print it. You can print it out and have a hard copy to play with and to study. This is a really, really good tool for young students and beginners. I mean, it's a really great thing for beginners. In fact, this might ultimately turn out to be my best musical idea. Of all my many ideas, this might turn out to be the best. I don't know. So anyway, what you kind of have is you have the circle of fifths, and there's kind of a theme here, a design. You have on your outer data ring, okay, your outer ring is your counter major ring. This ring is your major ring, data ring, and this is your minor data ring, and this is your diminished data ring. But on your outer one, you have all 12 chromatic tones, and let's say you chose C as your root tone or your tonal center, okay? So you have that, and if you move in one layer, you have the minor third interval. And this whole thing is based on the minor third interval, which is found clearly and plainly in the harmonic series. That's where I got it. If you move in one more level, you form the diminished chord. See your minor third intervals? And if you move in yet one more level, you'll end up with your diminished seventh chord. So the whole system, the whole chart, is really, really based on the minor third interval. That's very, very important, and it's a beautiful thing. Took me a long time to figure it out, but I like it. And you might see other people's charts and designs and ideas. You'll even see books on Amazon about the circle of fifth, and you'll see different charts, and you'll even see little sliding tools where you can slide the device and create scales and all that. But I doubt that you'll find one that's more efficient than this. Because, for example, with your C tonal center, they'll place the B tone over here so that the chart is symmetrical. And if you do that, it does not work. It does not work. So if you can find a more efficient one, let me know. Now, just today, quickly, I'd like to talk about something. Now, in previous videos, I showed how if you go through the process that I explained, you will realize scale shapes. I talked about that at length. Here, for example, is your C major scale tones. I tell you how you find them and what the shape looks like. And then I show in the following charts, I show the other 6 modes that go with that C major. I show that. I've shown this repeatedly in videos. Okay, and kind of what you did here was you just took your scale shape and you slid it. All right, you slide it, and you get your other modes of this C major scale. You see? Once again, I don't need to go into great detail because I've done this many times. Now, in previous videos, at least 2 of them, Amplified Circle of Fifth, number 9A, and Amplified Circle of Fifth, number 4, I talked about contiguous-cell chords, and they can be formed with the single tone method or the tone chord method. Okay, so I talked about that a little bit, and I talked about this, but I didn't talk a lot about it. I just skimmed over it. So today I'd like to quickly focus on the single tone method of finding chords. In other words, they ultimately turn out to be a chord shape. I talked about it a little bit, but I didn't say too much. So I'd like to show you some things. You start out with your amplified circle of fifths. And like I said, I put that image on the under the community tab on my channel. And then to show the slices and data rings a little bit more clearly, I make a rectangular version of this. In other words, instead of these slanted slices, I just make a rectangular version to show you for instruction purposes so that you can see it more clearly. So what we'll do is we'll take the rectangular version for now and look at some chord shapes. Here's your major. I use this symbol. All right, that's your major chord shape. Here's your data rings. All right, and here's your slices. It's the same as my chart, only it's rectangular so you can see it clearly. Here's the minor chord shape. You see, it's kind of this one here flipped over. All right, and you have your dominant seventh. That's my symbol in my system. Here's your conventional symbol. That's your chord shape. Right, and here's your augmented chord. And when I say contiguous, I mean that the cells are touching in some fashion. See, they're touching or they're beside each other. See, these are touching. So that's just four examples of chord shapes. You can study this on your own. It's kind of simple, but it's beautiful. I love it. I love the scale shapes and the chord shapes. Now here's your minor seventh shape, major seven shape, diminished shape, and diminished seven. All right? So you can take time out to think about this if you want to. I won't go on and on. I don't want to bore anybody to death. Now, if you go back to the circle of fifths itself, the actual circle, you'll discover something. Let's say you take a major chord shape, all right? And then you have a minor chord shape, all right? You see how it fits in the circle, how you recognize it. You say, oh, I know that shape. See, that's a major chord, all right? And you know this shape, minor. And here's a dominant seven, diminished, Here's a minor seven. That's a kind of a neat one, easy, rectangular. Here's your augmented. You have your augmented tones here, all right? So the thing is, you learn to recognize a shape and you say, well, that's a major, that's a minor, that's great. But the beauty is, this is the beauty of it. Let's say you took that major chord shape, all right? Here's a major chord shape right here. If you take that chord shape and you slide it over, you get another major chord. See here, you have your F major chord, here's your G major. If you slide it up one data ring and down, you get another major chord. If you keep sliding it, and you slide it down, you slide it back up, you get another one. or you slide it over and you slide it in, you still get a major chord. All you have to do is slide that chord shape anywhere and you get a major chord. And the beautiful thing is for beginners is that once you know your chord shape and you have this circle at your disposal, you can quickly learn chords, and you don't even really have to memorize the chord tones, because if you're a beginner, you say, oh, there's a zillion things to remember. You can just slide that chord shape, or at least slide it mentally, and boom, you got your chord tones for any given chord that you need. And it works for all the chord shapes, all the different types of chords. Like your dominant 7, you just slide it. You can slide it down, slide it in, slide it back. But that shape there will always yield a dominant 7 chord. It's a beautiful thing. So I hope I didn't take too long. You can see my previous videos to get the hang of the amplified circle of fifths. And you'll discover that there's some beautiful chord shapes, scale shapes, and also the chord shapes that I just showed. I didn't go into detail before, but now you know exactly what the chord shapes are, and it's a beautiful feature, and I hope it didn't take too long. So thank you for being patient, and good night.